you'll need some work, just let us know. We'll try to manage input if it's okay with everybody here. We'll try to manage input through our chat. So if you wouldn't mind chatting a question, chatting a suggestion, any issues with any of the sound, anything like that, definitely let us know, and we'll do our best to address those as they come in. I've got here Dr. Michelle Harless to my left. I've got Thomas Floyd behind me and Brandon Williams to my right. And we'll have other staff joining us from different locations. So we think we've got all the experts in the room as if you've got detailed questions in any area. But what I thought we'd do first is maybe do an overview of ESSER monies and projects that we have kind of on our wish list for this third round of ESSER money. And as we go through this list, like I said, if anything comes up, any suggestions, questions, just enter that into the chat and we'll do our best to monitor that. Before we get started, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoon and listening to what we feel is some of the best ideas that we have for this one-time federal money that's coming in through the form of these ESSER accounts. So just as an overview, ESSER is Elementary and Secondary Education Relief Funds, and that comes from the COVID relief started back with President Trump on the first initial release, and it was actually officially released, I think, under President Biden. There's been 3 issuances. We're currently in the application process for ESSER 3.0, as it's referred to in education. ESSER 3.0, just like the other prior ESSER releases, stipulates that 20% of the overall funds have to go toward educational gap closure. So any instructional gaps that may exist from closing due to COVID, going virtual, back into the classroom, back and forth, those types of things, any changes in instruction that may have resulted in students not accessing the content or instruction. So 20% of overall funds in each ESSER release is earmarked and has to be maintained for those purposes. So largely what I'm going to be talking about, with the exception of our summer school programs, is represented by the 80% remaining of those funds. So the model that we chose and that we dumped the most resources in is our summer school program. We have the allowance to do intervention during and after school, and we do have some great partnerships with YMCA that are helping us with the after school program. But for this first year, we have earmarked most of our learning gap monies toward the summer school efforts. And so I will mention that first and foremost, that we've got summer schools scheduled this year, next year, and the following year. And that's fairly expensive. Just to give you an idea, we're running 7 sites. We had 600 plus students sign up initially, and it's costing us, we estimate, close to $2 million just for one summer's worth of educational support for 1 month. That's running Monday through Thursday, right at 6 hours a day. If you account for all the buses, the teachers, the necessary assistants that are in each classroom supporting that, special education staff and administrators on site monitoring those practices, that is what it's costing us, we estimate. We'll have actual figures here in a couple weeks as we wind up our first year of summer school, but that gives you an idea as to the investment that we're looking at for summer school. Let me move on. If there's no questions regarding summer school, let me move on down to the list. And I've broken this up by instruction, supports, health and emotional support, technology, nutrition, maintenance and infrastructure, collaboration with our county government, and I want to highlight that toward the end there our CTE programs, because we've got a pretty aggressive plan for developing our CTE, and I know we've got a number of industry partners, so I did want to highlight that this afternoon. First off, instruction and instructional based supports. We're looking at everything from math interventionists, folks coming into our our classrooms, our school sites to target math intervention. One of the areas our data is showing that's lagging due to COVID closure is the area of math. So we are looking at some additional positions there. We're looking at 2 additional math teachers for our high schools. One of the biggest areas is when we were forced to close last March and then came back with a late opening this fall, is that students didn't have access to the math courses that are required of them prior to graduation. So there's naturally a fall behind period or a catch up that's necessary with a number of those high school students. We feel that additional staff in those high schools will allow us to get more students through, and specifically as we look at our Algebra 2 courses as they align. We're looking at 2 graduation coaches. The name is a little bit misleading, but basically these individuals would target our at-risk high school students and make sure that they are on track and stay on track toward graduation. If I had to summarize it, that's basically what we're requesting or requiring of those positions if we get them in place. And again, that's graduation coaches. Behavioral interventionist. When you think of intervening in a student's behavior, you typically think of something that of a child that may be in or classified as special needs. But we are looking at more and more instances prior to COVID and as a result of COVID of more behavioral support on our general education side as well as our special education side. So we're looking for behavioral interventionists for both realms to walk in both worlds, so to speak. Of course, technology integration, we would look at a couple of positions across the district to really support teachers in integrating more technology into their classroom. One of the positives of COVID that we saw was the need and response to technology and its use in the instructional layout of our classes. Some good, some bad, and where we see the need to further grow that and develop it, these interventionists would be key in working alongside our teachers to develop practices that not only engage students but keep them plugged in beyond the instructional day. Technology allows us to extend what happens in the classroom onto the home front or wherever the students are after school. And so if we have a rigorous program and the tools there necessary, which we do now, I think we can further develop some opportunities to extend that learning to our classrooms and to our students. We're looking at specialized contracted services such as speech and mental and emotional support. I'm sure you've heard in the news that students are coming back to school and have come back to our schools with a lot of needs. They left with a lot of needs and they're coming back due to the unstructured environments from time to time this year with even more needs. So we need to be proactively prepared to meet those as students return. That kind of gives a big sweeping overview of what we think we need for instruction and instructional support. I'll pause here for any questions that may have come up or any suggestions that I maybe didn't cover related to instructional support. And I don't see anybody typing or anything coming in, so I will assume we covered that well, but if that's not the case, if you think of something, please put that in the chat and we'll address it. Health and emotional support, I know that we mentioned some of that under contracted services for instruction, but I did want to talk a little bit more specifically. We also have a need for enhanced and increased vision screening. So that's something we're looking at devoting some of these monies to increasing those services. Of course, being overly prepared for any health services supplies. So anything that's needed through the term PPE that everybody's acquainted with now, making sure that we're overly supplied and prepared to address anything that comes up in those areas. And our county EMS and ordering system through TEMA has been exceptional. We feel like we're pretty well supplied there, but we're going to look specifically across the board and make sure that we're ready to hit any challenge that may come up. Mental health support providers on staff. One of the things that we've always relied on our partners outside of the school system to address some of the emotional needs that children bring to school. And through those contracted services, those have been largely free and available to us, but they're very limited. There's 1 or 2 staff typically available, in this case through Frontier Health and other partners. We're actually looking at what we could do to bring some of those staff on board, even if only for the duration of these funds, to have them readily on staff to address those needs proactively and as early as possible with some of our students. In the area of technology, I'll keep moving on unless we see questions. We're looking at infrastructure upgrades such as domains and server upgrades. We're looking at security camera upgrades and replacements and additions. For example, we've never put security cameras here at the central office. Unfortunately, we get a handful of people that may be irritated with me or one of the staff from time to time, and we do feel that it'd be worthwhile to have cameras here, not only for that purpose, but for potential theft or anything that happens, we'd at least have recordings of those types of things. So security related, and it's loosely safety related, but it is something we're looking at. Web filtering upgrades. The more technology we put out there with our staff and the more technology we put out there with students, we need to make sure that we are supporting the safe access for our students and for our staff along with that, and that would come in via web filtering. Canvas, for those of you at the university secondary level, you know what Canvas is all about, and it's our goal to expose our students to as many tools and especially instructional supports as possible, aligning with what they would see at the university and college level. So implementing Canvas, of which we have done that at the high school, we're looking at expanding that maybe down through middle school and looking at what we can get students exposed to and on board with at earlier ages. Malware and antivirus upgrades. I would like to tell you that we've been immune from such things as malware, but we had an email malware that shut us down a couple days this last year on top of everything else. So we've already put some tools in place, but we'd like to go across the board and make sure that we've got upgrades that are consistent with the attacks that are out there awaiting us, unfortunately. Student Chromebooks, we have enough and more than enough. We've been very diligent and proactive and forward thinking in getting more than enough of the Chromebooks in place, but because these are one-time monies, we want to prepare ourselves for as much success in the future as possible. So we're looking at maybe purchasing those in advance and securing them and then dispersing them well after the time frame of this money has been expended. So a forward purchase of that as much as possible. That gets kind of tricky for those of you that deal with technology on a daily basis, because you know how fast it improves, and it's kind of like driving a car off the lot. You lose $15,000 the minute you drive out of the dealership. You know, we purchased this technology up front, and all of a sudden it's antiquated. So we need to kind of pair the purchases for the future with that in mind, but we want to be as proactive as possible with these one-time funds. Central office nutrition services. Up here at the central office, we have a great nutrition team that have served well over I think the figure was 140,000 plus meals as of several months ago. I don't even know if I have current figures because it's astronomical what they've been able to do through the pandemic and keeping kids fed and offering those services and supporting them. But they've got some needs. I just wrote down an example. There's a need at Carters Valley Elementary, one of our elementary schools that's actually growing quite a bit because of our need to close a couple of schools that were very small and underpopulated. They've got a need, for example, of a walk-in cooler to maintain you know, dairy and other expendable food items for their students. So those types of things are being considered with these monies as well. That kind of spills into maintenance and infrastructure. We've got, if you've followed any of the media around Hawkins County schools, you'll know that we had a very large HVAC project at both of our comprehensive high schools. Clinch being the exception because it was a newer facility, but Cherokee and Volunteer have been in need of an HVAC overhaul and ductwork overhaul for numerous years prior to me coming, and that's one of the big projects that we were really concerned about being able to fund. The biggest blessing has been of this ESSRER money is that you can, if you take the 20% off the top that has to go toward instructional support and gap closure, it does allow you, the rules do allow for us identifying large expenditures in the realm of infrastructure and maintenance. So those projects are going to be paid for through these funds at no cost to the general public and no tax increases. So we're very, very excited to do that, to not have to ask the taxpayers for additional funds. In addition to those two big projects, we're looking at air conditioning for the remaining 10 gymnasiums across the county. A large amount of our gymnasiums were not air conditioned when they were first built. So you can imagine summer camps and tryouts and workouts that are going on with volleyball and basketball. They get extremely hot in there, and even if you attempt to do those in the evenings, it's very, very stuffy. So we're pleased to add that to the list, and we think we can get the remaining 10 gymnasiums in the county with air conditioning through the use of these funds. Water bottle filling station, sorry. We had a grant and we had some assistance in providing these filling stations in the past. They are extremely popular, but they're a little bit expensive to put in. So we're going to utilize some of the ESSER funds to upgrade the remaining 16 sites with at least one or two, depending on the size of the site, bottle filling stations, which is exciting. It doesn't sound like a huge project, but it's pretty important. Playground safety upgrades. Safety upgrades to the playgrounds are mandatory. We have to inspect those regularly. We have to keep those on the list as far as routine maintenance and upgrades. But we've got some things that we want to do and have wanted to do to make sure that they're safer for the long term, such as the rubberized playing surfaces that have the built-in cushion around equipment that the students play on and climb on, those types of things. We still have a number that are gravel, for example, and the gravel has to be a certain depth, and with that cushion factor built in. With the rubberized surfaces, you don't have to do that, and it doesn't require as much maintenance, so we're able to move forward with some of those types of upgrades through these funds, or at least we've got them on the list as of right now. Another example would be if you're familiar with Hawkins Elementary School. It's one of our larger facilities, but it's at the age where its HVAC system is antiquated. It still has a water pumping filtration system where the water is pumped through pipes and cooled and heated and that type of thing, and it has numerous leaks from time to time depending on what type of weather and situations we're going through. We have that on the list to upgrade, and that brings most of our sites up to current standards. Security is one area that we're looking at with these funds, and that's one example would be to secure all of our entrances at our school sites. Our schools, a large amount of our schools were built prior to some of the things we've seen in the media the last 15 to 20 years, school shootings, intruders on campus, those types of things. And so we need to look at what we can do to be proactive and guard against those things happening at our school sites. We do have the ability, of course, to lock our doors, but it makes sense in some cases, for example, to move the entrance to where it's more visible, and if somebody were to breach that outside entrance, they can't get access to the rest of the school. So considering those types of things, having a secondary set of doors, a controlled corridor, or a vestibule, that type of thing, are all things that we're considering as far as safety and security. Speaking of that, we are in the process right now of electronically securing all of our entrances. So all employees would have an access card and or code, which makes it easier access for them. They don't have to carry around as many keys, but it controls access to our buildings to those that are actively employed. If we have an unfortunate situation where we have a disgruntled employee that leaves us, we can have access to turn that access card off and therefore limit our exposure on certain fronts. So, and again, large amount of what I'm talking about is purely hypothetical. I don't want to paint the picture that we're a bad workplace or that we cause frustration amongst our employees or anything like that, but we need to think outside the box with these one-time funds and make sure that we are taking everything into consideration. I mentioned earlier some collaborative efforts that we may have with our county, our government. Two of those examples are working with EMS to upgrade radio communication towers that not only serve our EMS support employees, ambulances, fire staff, that type of thing, but also those towers are used by our transportation department. We run over 100 buses. We cover hundreds of thousands of miles a year. And in some accesses and some places, cell phone access is not possible. So if we were to be able to help the county upgrade some of those radio towers, we would benefit greatly from that because it would extend the range by which our radios would work, and we would have at least one means by which to communicate with our drivers and our drivers with us and with emergency services throughout the county. Another example would be a potential opportunity for collaborating with the county government to run a water line to feed Clinch School. If you have followed Hawkins County schools for any amount of period, you know that that's one of our newer schools, but it's still dependent upon a well. And that well is powered by electricity and it's filtered via electricity. So anytime we lose electricity at that site, we lose water. And if that's for more than a couple of hours, you can imagine that we don't have very many options other than just to close down for the day because you can't have access to you can't run a school with no access to water. So if we were able to bite the bullet, so to speak, and afford in conjunction with the county to run a water line over to Clinch, it wouldn't just benefit the school. There would be a potential benefit for any residents up and down that route, possibly from Sneedville there all the way over to Clinch, depending on where they're able to tee that in and run it up there. So again, that's a possibility. It's dependent upon a number of things occurring, namely, number one, making sure that the county and Hawkins County schools can work out something to where we're both contributing toward that project. We find a suitable water carrier, a utility that's able to do the work. And then number three, assuming that those things fall in place, that we were able to come up with something that the Department of Education at the state of Tennessee would approve through this process. So those are some big ifs, but I do think that it's definitely tied to safety and health related to our students and to a population that represents one of our most rural settings. So any questions on anything that I covered or any of those areas where you may have some input or questions? All right. Well, if you don't, if you're still thinking, or if something comes up, obviously type something in there or raise your hand. We'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and just ask. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Brandon Williams, who heads our CTE, and let him give you an overview of where we're at with CTE and where we think some of these funds may benefit us here in the future.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for being here, particularly to the folks I reached out to. I appreciate you making time and joining us today to help us with this process. It's an exciting time in CTE. This has been a challenging year for everyone, and it's incredibly challenging for CTE, but we've been really successful and really proud of where we are. But we've got a lot of really good things happening, and I think we're on our way to doing even more good things. And Mr. Hickson said it best a few moments ago when he said that we really have an aggressive strategy moving forward. We've got a vision to do some things with CTE that I think are going to be really beneficial to obviously to our students, but also to the county and the community. And some of those things that we talk a lot about, for a lot of you on the call, you've heard me say this before, but for the record, I'll say it again. Our main goals in CTE right now are, one, to drastically expand our work-based learning opportunities for our students. So we want to get some of our upperclassmen students out of our buildings and into some of your buildings to be able to learn while they're on the job. And we were able to do that this year, even with all the challenges of COVID. And it's my hope that in the near future, we're going to see that program explode in terms of numbers and success. The other main goal we have right now is to drastically increase the number of nationally recognized industry credentials our students are earning while they're in high school. And I can't tell you how excited I am to share with you that this year, even in the year of COVID, we were able to not only meet our goal for industry credentials, but we actually doubled it. So we're going to set that goal a little higher next year. So we've got some great stuff happening, and we're doing some even more exciting things. One thing that we've been working on for quite some time, and we're able to utilize the ESSER funding to help us accomplish, was to implement a fire science program or fire management services. So we've, the central office team, we've heard from lots of community representatives, particularly among the emergency services workers, tell us that the volunteer fire system in Hawkins County could really use some help in terms of not only recruiting potential members, but in particular exposing them to some level of training on the front end. And we feel like that's something we can do. There's a very good program of study available within Tennessee CTE for fire management services. And we were able to secure the funding within the ESSER application to implement that program. So we're going to give that a try at both Cherokee and volunteer, and we're really excited about seeing how that goes. I think it's going to be really good. We have a lot of support from local fire departments. Several agencies have reached out and offered to lend their support in terms of donating surplus equipment, in terms of working with us for guest speaker opportunities or site visit opportunities to bring students on site to a real fire department and see how it works. So it's exciting stuff. One thing that we're looking at moving forward is, and I think this really goes to that statement of being aggressive with our vision, is we're really looking at how we can centralize some of our CTE offerings to open those up to all students in Hawkins County. So for instance, if we have a program that's only being offered at Volunteer High School right now, unfortunately that limits us to only offering it to about 1,200 students, whereas we've got another 1,200 at Cherokee, and we've got another 40 or so high schoolers at Clinch. We're really thinking hard about trying to find a way to centralize some of our offerings so that we can get students to a location outside of the regular high school where they can take advantage of some of these offerings. I'm really excited about that. There's a lot of work ahead of us. It's probably not going to be something that happens really fast, but it's something that I think it's going to be a huge benefit for the county. It's going to be a huge benefit, not just for our students, but for local business and industry here in Hawkins County. Let's see, I had one more thing on the tip of my tongue. I've lost it.
New grant.
Sorry.
Reserve grant.
Yes, oh yeah, some good news to share with everyone. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Some good news to share with everyone. The announcement was made yesterday that Hawkins County has been awarded the Perkins Reserve Grant for 2021-22. So we're in alignment with meeting that industry credential goal that we doubled. We're going to implement the Snap-on PMI certification at Clinch School next year. So we're really excited about that. It's a way for us to expand our access to industry credentialing to students at Clinch School. If you're familiar with Hawkins County, and I think all of you are, you know that Clinch is very remote in terms of its location. It's also very small, so we don't have a whole lot of CTE offerings on that campus. So being able to expand this industry credential opportunity to those students is really exciting to us, because it's just something we've wanted to do for a long time, but it's not something that's easy to do because that equipment is rather expensive. So we're very thankful to have received the Perkins Reserve Grant to cover the cost of that equipment. We've got the staff in place there already who's able to deliver the instruction. So that's exciting stuff. Anything else I'm missing? I had something else, but I've lost it, and I didn't make as thorough notes as Mr. Hickson did.
We can come back to it.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a minute. Again, for those industry reps on the line here, thank you for joining us today. I hope you will hang around for a few minutes and share some feedback with us and give us some suggestions as to where you want to see us take our CTE programs. And now that I say that, I've thought of what I was going to tell you. We are in the process of looking at a program expansion. We've been working with one of the industry reps that's on the line today to explore the offering of a machine tool program. That'd be a new offering for Hawkins County. We've never had that in our CTE. It's a very expensive startup, so just to be blunt about it, we are seeking and would be dependent upon some grant funding to get that program started. But things are looking pretty good as of today. I think we're headed in the right direction to be able to do that. So that's an exciting thing as well. But again, if you're an industry or post-secondary rep on the line, I hope you'll hang around for a few minutes and give us some suggestions, because really that's what this call is about, is to get your feedback on what our plans are and what you need from us.
Thanks, Brandon. Go ahead.
This is Lottie, and good afternoon. Thanks for including me today. Brandon, as I talk with businesses around the region and we look at internships and different types of opportunities, how flexible can the school system be with, for example, if they want to do hold 10 FTEs and have then 20 students, for example, can we do half days? So if they need a 4-hour shift and then they can do school for 4 hours, can you all be flexible in that?
Yes, that's a great question, Lottie, and I appreciate you asking, because it's something that I don't think of mentioning to people nearly enough. But with the vision Director Hickson had with Hawkins County Virtual Academy when he came on board here a couple of years ago, that's really opened the door for that type of flexibility. So if we're working with an industry partner who wants a split shift, work-based learning placement, we can absolutely be flexible with the student schedule. We've been able to accomplish that within the scheduling at the high schools themselves, but in the rare circumstance that we can't accomplish that at the high school, the student could be enrolled as a virtual academy student. And at that point, we have lots of flexibility. So that's a great question. You want to add anything to that?
No, I think that was one of the ideas behind the virtual academy, is to give students that had work-based learning needs and desires that could only be met during the course of a regular workday, this would provide them that flexibility to accomplish those things and work with the industry that was providing that opportunity for the students.
Yeah, and to that point, in terms of flexibility and going back to what we talked about a moment ago with the vision of eventually getting to offering some central CTE offerings, that's another piece of that puzzle that would help us, is being able to be flexible with the rest of the students' schedule. So they could free up a little more time to be on site doing some CTE work, or in the field doing work-based learning placement that's attached to their CTE coursework. So the virtual academy has been a blessing to us in a lot of ways, but in terms of CTE, it's an ace in our pocket that we can really take advantage of in terms of opening up a student schedule.
Any other questions or suggestions? I do have.
Brandon.
Go ahead.
Hey, Brandon, this is Heath. Let me commend you on that effort to combine your CTE offerings. I think that's a great idea. I'm actually a product of that just across the state line in Scott County. They do that too. They've got a great model there. So I would suggest you take a look at that. They've been doing that for many years. They've got 3 high schools feeding into their vocational school. So it's a great model, and it's a great way to, ensure all students have access to the same offerings. And as far as the PMI goes at Clinch, way to go on that. That's a great thing. Here at Arcan, we've got the AMI, so that's the Advanced Measuring Instrument. So maybe we could have a partnership after they are certified in the PMI to look at advancing to the AMI if you've got some industry partners that find value in that.
Absolutely, Heath, and thanks for being with us today. I appreciate you making the time to be with us. The centralized offerings thing, it's really a necessity at this point, because Hawkins County it's a large county. We cover 500 plus square miles, and the reality is at our 2 large high schools, we're running out of space, if not already out of space. And we talked about Clinch and how remote it is. So a centralized offering for some of the programs that are only offered at one location, it's really the only option I see to expand that access countywide. So that's what's driving that vision. I'm familiar with Scott County's program. My wife actually is a graduate of Scott County Schools as well, and she and I spent a lot of time talking about their CTE program over there and how that works. There are some neighboring systems that you may have seen in the news recently are thinking of this type of thing as well. Bristol City Schools is in the middle of kicking off a big project that's similar to this. And it makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels. So I appreciate your support of the idea, and hope that we can work together, and absolutely on working together with the students at Clinch. That's exactly what we're hoping to do.
I've got a number of staff, not only just here in the room, but across the Zoom platform. So if anyone wants to mention something that I may have glossed over or didn't cover with enough detail, I know that Thomas behind me, Mr. Floyd, would like to talk a little bit about the need behind the algebra offerings and the additional math teachers, and maybe flesh that out a little bit. So I've asked him to say a couple words relative to those things.
Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Good deal. So as Director Hickson said, we looked at adding, and in our plan, we've added an Algebra 2 teacher to each of our comprehensive high schools. And a question arose as to why that subject exactly. Within the graduation requirements, the most difficult class that we have historically that all graduates have to take is Algebra 2. If you might not want to do this because they're pretty extensive, but the Algebra 2 standards the content itself is very rigorous. And again, all students who graduate from high school have to take that class. So when we see those failure rates within a normal year, they tend to tick up as compared to some of our other classes. And that does a couple of things. One, let's say a student fails a class, they have to retake it. So we're shifting a cohort from one year to the next, and we're adding repeaters back to that original schedule. So you can see how those seat counts would creep up. And one way we want to combat that and to try to address what we've seen with math learning loss in COVID would be to try to decrease those seat counts. In other words, get those student-teacher ratio down lower and try to better meet the needs of our students for the Algebra 2. The grad coaches, I can sum it up as this, and we did some interviews for grad coaches this morning. One of the candidates asked a really great question, and that was, what exactly is your goal for the grad coach? And the principal I was with this morning answered that question and then handed that off to me, and I told the candidate, my goal would be this. When we hand someone a diploma, like we did a couple weeks ago, as they walk across that stage, that before that day even comes, they have a plan for when they take that first step off that stage. And what I mean by that is this. Brian, we want them to come to you. Ms. Lottie, we want them to come to Northeast State. We want them to go to East Tennessee State. We want them to go to TCAT. We want them to go to the workforce, and want for them to have a rock solid plan of what they're going to do on the next step after they receive that diploma. And that's really my goal for the grad coach. Now, there's a whole lot of other things that go with that. We're seeing kids not accrue credits at a normal rate, and we've got to monitor that. And we have really taxed our counseling folks the last couple of years. And you'll notice that other systems in our area and across the nation do have grad coaches already in place. And those folks primarily, again, will track those students and really will target some students who are more at risk than others and try to make sure everybody's on track. But again, I think the goal for the grad coach would be when we hand them a diploma and they take that next step, that they've already got a plan of what they're going to do that next week. And I think you all would agree as educators and business folks and employers that, you know, we've got jobs out there, but some of our kids and some of our graduates really don't know what to do next. So we're trying to be proactive and ahead of the game with that position.
Any other staff member that's on, anything that you want to flesh out or detail some more?
But again, you know, it all depends on where the student is in their job exploration process. And so not every student will necessarily participate in career training, but it's important to know that it's out there and that how you can facilitate these trainings for students and how it would benefit them. So career training differs somewhat from career preparation in that the training is specific to a particular job and focuses on gaining credentials for a certain occupation. Typically, students participate in career training experiences at the end of their schooling if they have very specific employment goals or a goal in mind. So in particular, like apprenticeship programs and on-the-job training. These experiences are very helpful for students because they provide clear instructions about how to be successful in a very specific job. An apprenticeship is a program that aims to prepare students for a specific job while meeting a business's need for a highly skilled employee. It's a model that combines on-the-job training and paid work, meaning workers are paid through that program. New hires or current employees who need to upgrade their skills can participate in an apprenticeship as well. Apprenticeships can occur in a variety of careers, but a couple that might help solidify this vision for you is manufacturing or construction, information technology, healthcare, energy, transportation, and logistics. Students will experience hands-on training under the guidance of an experienced mentor companies conduct training in accordance with national industry standards, and some aspects of the apprenticeship will change depending on the employer, such as things like the company culture training. And then many apprenticeships require workers to.
I thought Wendy was maybe bringing in a question or differentiation between an internship, work-based learning, apprenticeship. I'm not real sure what was going on there, but if Wendy, if you can hear me, maybe post your question to the chat.
Training schools could provide instruction on.
Matt, I've been watching this Transition Tennessee for the past 2 days, and it seems like the special ed students should be more involved with the CTE program in some way, form, or fashion. Is there any way we can possibly do that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Wendy, and absolutely. So with the transition coach that's on staff currently and to expand on CTE goals, hopefully in the near future, a work-based learning coordinator, we would absolutely like to do that for sure.
That's a good suggestion. Wendy, I apologize. I think if you were listening to a training or a recording, somehow that was coming through the audio there. So I apologize to everybody if there was any confusion there, but that's a great question. I think Brandon addressed that. That would definitely be a goal of ours to increase those opportunities. Any other questions, comments, anything from staff that are on the call this afternoon? We're getting some good comments. I appreciate, even if you don't have questions, if you're in support of it, the plan overall, or if you particularly like or dislike certain aspects of the plan, I think that's very beneficial for us to hear. We do value, if those of you that were around when we did our strategic plan update, we did a series of stakeholder meetings, and I think we want to do more of that as we're getting out of COVID. Go back to that model that we were trying to head toward when we provided opportunities for industry partners, businesses, higher ed, community stakeholders to be involved in providing us input and setting a good course of action and direction for us in tune with our board vision and mission. So I just want to thank you for being part of it this afternoon. It doesn't mean that if we end the call, doesn't mean that you can't contribute a suggestion or question or a concern after the fact. And to that note, we do have an open survey that's posted on our website specific toward ESSER. That will remain open for the next several weeks probably. We've got to finalize this plan and submit it by the middle of August. I think August 15th is our due date. So we'll be looking at wrapping this up over the next month and a half and getting that prepared to send up to the state level for approval. And as I mentioned, there's a number of things, especially our collaborative efforts with the county and EMS, that may be fleshed out over the next month or so, and a lot of details will potentially need to fall into place. But I think as much as we can, we want to be as transparent as possible. Even though these are one-time dollars, we can't use them for sports programs. We can't use them for one site over another. It has to benefit as many students in the county as possible, and that's what our goal is anyway. But even within those confines and those restrictions, we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to support our industry partner, our community stakeholder goals and wishes and desires as they see our graduates prepared for entering the workforce and or going on to school or learning a trade. So again, I want to thank you for your input. If you think of anything right after the call or within the next several weeks, please fill out that survey for us. It's pretty quick and easy. It's located on the website. And I haven't asked Michelle this, so I'm going to put her on the spot a little bit, but we're recording this presentation, so I would imagine that we would get this posted on our website here fairly shortly, so that if you know of any industry partners or any colleagues that or community members that may have missed the call, they would have access to this after the fact and then could forward the questions via the survey after listening and watching this. So I'll pause for a couple minutes here at the end for any suggestions or questions. And if there aren't any, we'll head toward wrapping up.
This is Lottie again, and this is really going back to an early conversation about summer school. I am curious, what was the requirement for summer school in your system? Like, was there a performance level, or did the state dictate how you guys could recruit for summer school? How does that work?
Great question, Lottie. We're Title I K-8, so we pretty much were able to open it up to any student. We did run, we have benchmark data that we looked at to see if certain students were lagging, and we obviously really highly encourage those students as priority to sign up for summer school. But given our system and its economic, its socioeconomic level, we were able to pretty much extend summer school to any student that wanted to attend. Once we started several weeks ago, we assess those students coming in, and we will do a post-assessment here at the very end of summer school to chart their growth within the 4-week period.
What percentage of your students ended up participating, do you know?
We had roughly 600 sign up that enrolled, and probably well, of the enrolled, that represents roughly 10% of our population. We were pretty pleased with that because we knew that like the adults in the room here, we were all looking forward to hopefully the economy opening up and travel opening up and getting away with our families sometime during the summer. So we were pleasantly surprised by the number of students that signed up. We had no problem filling teacher needs. We had a hard time recruiting bus drivers, believe it or not, for driving the summer school routes. And so we had to operate some centralized pickup and drop off locations, that type of thing. But as far, going back to your question, as far as the students that enrolled, we were pleasantly surprised and pleased with 10%. We would have taken 20 or 30 if they would have shown up, but we were pleasantly surprised by that percentage for the initial offering this year.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brandon.
Hey, Cindy, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I just wanted to mention, and I know that Wendy mentioned apprenticeship programs. Something that's been happening, Heath and I've been involved with Tennessee High School, for example. They are starting pre-apprenticeship programs. That goes right along with your work-based learning and industry credentialing. So I know Mary Beth probably has some information about it. Lottie probably does as well, but that's something we ought to talk about. Tennessee High School just signed pre-apprenticeship, and just to give you an example, J.A. Street, they're hiring students in the summer. They're also giving them opportunities after school hours, up to 20 hours a week, and they're starting a pre-apprenticeship program. And when they graduate, if they're ready to go full-time, they'll be bringing them in full-time. If they want to go on to school, they'll accommodate that as well. But that's something I think you're going to see in our region. He can probably talk a little bit more about it, but apprenticeships, we're working with about 8 to 10 major companies in this area. A lot of them will probably be looking at pre-apprenticeships to help get their, their pathway to employment. A lot of people are needing good people, and it's kind of a crisis in our area. So just something really, for you to think about.
And Brandon, kind of how that pre-apprenticeship works. We have an apprenticeship going with J.A. Street in carpentry and metal buildings. We currently use the NCCR curriculum. So what happens is in Tennessee High's carpentry program, they're currently using NCCR curriculum as well, which is, I think it's approved state CTE curriculum. So they will get prior credit to enter directly into J.A. Street's apprenticeship program. So I'm not sure if you guys have a building trade program or not, but it would be a pretty seamless transition if you guys have that, and to get that pre-apprenticeship signed with the state.
We do. We have a residential commercial construction offering at Volunteer High School. I was in that initial Zoom call where you all discussed the pre-apprenticeship with J.A. Street, and that's a really great program. I hope we're able to do some of that in the future Y'all mentioned a few minutes ago, hopefully adding a work-based learning coordinator in the future. One of the things, when I interviewed for my job, I told Director Hickson and the team that one of my goals was to really make the work-based learning program explode in terms of numbers. Since taking the job, though, I've had to reel that back a little bit because I don't want us to get too far out front of what we're able to manage in terms of numbers and in terms of where people are. We're taking small steps, but absolutely we're interested in pre-apprenticeships and even registered apprenticeships beyond high school. We worked with Massey Electric just recently to identify some graduates. They were high school students at the time that they were identified, but they're graduates now and they've entered into a pre-apprenticeship. I'm not sure if it's a registered pre-apprenticeship, so maybe I shouldn't say that that's what it is, but it's the same type idea as what you all are doing with J.A. Street and Tennessee High. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you and Cindy both a little more about that. And Cindy, thanks for bringing that up for sure, because that's definitely something that's on the horizon for us as we expand our work-based learning program here in Hawkins County.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yes, ma'am. Did you have another question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, well, if there aren't any other suggestions or questions, comments, again, I want to value everybody's time and get you back to work, whether or not you want to. But I do appreciate everybody's time. And again, please make use of the survey that's posted on the website. If you think of anything that you may have not noted here on the call, or if you have future thoughts, by all means, make use of that survey and make use of the recording once we post it. If you want to pass it on to anybody or make them aware of it, greatly would appreciate that as well. And I'll end by saying great to see all of you and hear from you, and thank you for your efforts, and especially thank you for your support, even if indirect, for Hawkins County Schools and the students here, and we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.